Hi, everybody. Welcome back to the Limit Breakdown, where we break down the latest in movies, TV, and everything going on in entertainment. I'm your host, Migs.
I'm Sid.
And today we're going to be breaking down the series finale of House of the Dragon. And we're also going to be giving our overall Season 1 review. So to kick that off, our too long didn't watch review for Season 1 of House of the Dragon was 4 Hearts. That means it was an enjoyable watch. If you're a fan of Game of Thrones, I think you're going to find this redeemed it quite a bit.
Definitely.
So stay tuned with us after the intro, and we'll give you our deep dive next.
Welcome back, everybody, and today we're going to be reviewing Season 1 of House of the Dragon. Overall, great season.
Yes,
Right. Phenomenal season. I enjoyed it. What are your most impactful moments and your overall review?
Okay, so before we get into the overall review, well, before we get to the series as a whole, I want to talk specifically about the series finale. And I just want to say that it was a little slower paced than I anticipated, but it packed a big emotional gut punch, especially at the end. There's a lot of hesitancy, and we're made to see a bunch of different aspects and different things of people reacting to the news of Viserys' death and the potential alliances, and I think it was very interesting how they're showing Rhaenyra kind of playing a more level-headed role in spite of everything that was going on. Man, I really don't think we needed to see another traumatic birthing scene. I feel like we could have done without that.
That was not expected at all. I did not know where that was coming from. That scene was very
it's one of those things too where it was like, the impact of the sudden shock of learning that her father was dead, which shouldn't have been a shock, but but the sudden shock of learning her father's dead, and then that they usurped her birthright, all in one blow, like that. And, obviously that kicked her into premature labor. The fact that they did a close-up on the dead baby, that was like, whoa, yeah. And then I thought it was very meaningful, too, that Rhaenyra chose to prepare the baby herself instead of allowing the Silent Sisters to wrap up the baby.
Yeah, she delivered the baby herself. She's like...
Oh, yeah, no. She was like, no, don't stay away from me.
I got this.
Yeah, it was very hardcore. Very, very hardcore. And they did answer one of the questions that had been asked before as far as why Rhaenys didn't Dracarys the entire greens in the previous episode when she busted out of the dragon pit. She said it wasn't her war to start. So that I'm glad that they addressed that, because I feel like I didn't think we were going to get an answer for that. I thought it would just kind of be one of those things that got kind of swept under the rug or overlooked.
I thought that was just a very boss move at the end of her, right? I just thought it was really for her. She's like, I could do this, just know that you're living because of me.
Yeah.
And then leave. But yes, I'm glad that they gave an official answer, but still, either way, the scene itself and her doing that was great. Another thing that I thought was really, really interesting was kind of the parallel between the first episode and this one. The first episode being, they want the baby to be born for the rights reason or whatever, and then in this one it's more of a flip side. Now the king is dead, so this kind of is like, well, this child not really is going to be king, but kind of like a parallel to that. So I thought that was pretty cool. That very gruesome scene.
Yeah, the way that they've used these birthing scenes in the show has really been thought-provoking, because again, as you said from the beginning, the very obvious analogy that they made about the woman's battlefield being on the birthing bed, and it going from Queen Emma over to Lena, and her choosing to go out on her own terms, and then Rhaenyra over here not wanting to accept the help of the Septons, and just kind of being like, no, I got this, and even on top of everything that was going on, like. It showed a lot of strength on her part. And then I also thought it was particularly interesting how Daemon was more or less kind of like, nope, I'm going to pretend like it's not happening. I'm going to be over here planning the war strategy. And at one point, even one of the Kingsguard was like, don't you want to go talk to the Maester and check on the Queen?
He's like, I'm going to go make preparations.
Yeah, I'm just going to...
Not my scene.
Yeah, I don't know. Another scene that caused a lot of controversy with people online was the scene where Daemon and Rhaenyra are talking, and Rhaenyra is trying to explain to Daemon basically why she's showing so much reserve, because he's very upset, and he's like, why aren't you angry? Why aren't you on the warpath? And she goes to tell him, she starts talking about the prophecy of the prince that was promised, and then he comes up and he chokes her.
Man, that scene, I was like, oh my god.
And so a lot of people are like, oh, that's out of character for Damien, which it's not.
That's very much in character.
It's not, but I think what a lot of people missed in that scene is literally a breakpoint moment for both of them. Where at that moment, when Rhaenyra's trying to tell Daemon about the prophecy, she realizes that Viserys never really considered Daemon to be his heir, because he never told him about the prophecy. And at that same time, Daemon realized the same thing, because he didn't have a clue what Rhaenyra was talking about.
When she's like, he never told you, and he just backs up. He's like, ugh.
Yeah, and so he kind of just do the Daemon thing, just kind of like, oh, well, my brother was always obsessed with his prophecies. But at the same time, it was such a pivotal thing, because both of them at the same time realized that it was always going to be Rhaenyra. That Daemon realized that even if he had been temporarily named heir, his brother never trusted him enough to trust him with that information, and then Rhaenyra realized the same thing. Yeah. And so I thought that was a very interesting exchange.
Yeah. Speaking of the War Council, the coolest scene, in my opinion, when the table lights up and they're like, all right, prepare the War Council, and they put the candles underneath, and the table just lights up. Immediately, I was like, I want that table.
Dude, it was like one of those moments from like Pimp My Ride, where it's like, I heard you like tables, right? But we got lights under your tables.
Please, MTV, pimp my dining table.
Pimp my war table.
Oh man, the War Council scene was, I think, phenomenal. It showed for the first time what Rhaenyra, can do, and it was her first time basically in power, and being like, let me spit out some commands, some questions, things like that. And I thought the way she handled it was really well, right? She's like, hey, all right, where do we currently stand?
Yeah.
Everyone's like, okay, we can do this, we have these people under our banner, we have these people, and then she's making her whole plan. And I thought that to show her progress, and the fact that she can be queen, fantastic. Yeah, I thought it was really, really, really clever of her and of how they shot it.
And it was also very well that they showed her kind of showing that bit of restraint. Daemon was ready. He was like, look, we got 14 dragons to their 4.
Man, yeah.
When they started counting off the dragons and stuff, man. So I'm going to jump around a little bit, but eventually Daemon goes to see the dragon in the pit, right? Yeah. So I don't know how many people know this, but that's the first time we've seen this particular dragon. Yeah. That's Vermithor, the old king's mount. So
That's the black dragon, right?
No, that's not Balerion. Mm-hmm. Okay, that's not the Black Dread. Mm-hmm. The Black Dread died. That's the skull.
That's in the Red Keep.
No, this is Jaharis' dragon. So the king who was king before Viserys, the one who had the High Council. So this dragon has been unclaimed for going on 20 some odd years. According to the lore, like several 20, 30 people have died just trying to claim Vermithor. And nobody's been able to claim him. That it kind of reflected a little bit on why it was such an accomplishment that Aemond was able to claim Vhagar. Because just because you get on the dragon doesn't mean the dragon is gonna accept you. So that kind of sheds a little light on that. But the fact that he was going over there and that Vermithor, because at this point Vermithor is the second biggest dragon next to Vhagar.
Vhagar, yeah.
So I guess he was going to. I don't know the exact purpose of him going over there, because to the best of my knowledge, Targaryens can only ride one dragon. Like he couldn't claim another dragon. So, but I guess he wanted to go see. I was like, oh, just how angsty are you?
Do you want to battle? You don't have to be a rider. Just learn how to battle. Learn how to fight.
But they brought up the point that at this point, Sea Smoke was riderless. Vermithor was riderless. There's another really large dragon called the Cannibal that's riderless. Sheep Stealer is riderless. And I believe there's another wild dragon. So all of these are going to come into play. Now, it's going to be interesting to see how they bring forth, because in the books, the Targaryens have been known to have bastards out there. And they're called the Dragon Seeds. And in the book, there's a couple of dragon seeds that become dragon riders.
Fair. So, that's pretty cool.
So it's gonna be interesting to see them introduce that stuff.
Yeah. The same scene right before when Daemon is like, well, we have this dragon, and he's like, we surround the capital and we'll have them by moon's turning, or by the turn of the moon.
Well, yeah.
And by the turn of the moon, drop the mic. I was like, he has a point.
Yeah, but at the same time, like Rhaenyra at that point, like I said, was showing restraint, because she's like, when dragons fight dragons, like everything burns, and so she did the classic line, "I don't want to be the queen of the ashes."
Yeah.
So
they only the Greens only have 3 dragons?
4.
They have Vhagar.
They have Vhagar. They have Sunfire. They have Dreamfire. That's Helena's dragon, and they have There's a fourth. There's a fourth Hightower Targaryen. He's Darren. His name is Darren the Bold. He's Alicent's child, but we haven't been introduced to him. He was very studious, and he went off to basically study with the Maesters. So he was never really very active during this part of the story.
They haven't shown him.
They haven't shown him.
Okay, I was
the only mention they have of him is in the entrance. You know how they show all of the bloodlines splitting off. When you look at Alicent and Viserys' bloodline, you can see 4 streams.
Okay.
Yeah,
that makes sense.
Yeah, a lot of book readers were kind of afraid that they might be cutting him out of the show completely. And he
probably
played,
season 2 or 3.
Yeah, they're gonna introduce him in season 2.
Fair enough.
But they have 4 dragons to the 14 that are. But again, the point being, let's not undersell this. Vhagar counts as more than one dragon.
Yeah. Speaking of which,
oh my god.
So obviously at the end, towards the end, they're like, we gotta send our bannermen, get some recruits, and be like, hey, make sure you guys are still loyal to the original.
They should have sent the Raven.
Right, to the queen rather than the new king.
Yeah.
So, and Jace was like, well, why don't you send us? It'd be a lot better. We'll be going messengers.
It's like dragons are faster than ravens.
And we can show our power.
Yeah.
Right, so the whole Teddy Roosevelt thing, be silent but carry a big stick type thing.
Speak quietly but
carry
a big stick. Yeah.
And so, which made a good point. So like, cool. And
they didn't count on the other guy having a bigger stick.
So obviously they go their separate ways. I think one's going to Stark. Jace goes to Stark's, and he's making 2 stops.
Yeah,
Stark
he's going to the Vale.
Yeah.
To speak with the Lady of the Vale, who has blood ties to the Targaryens, and then he's going to go see the Starks.
Yeah, and then while Luke is going to see Baratheons.
Storm's End,
see Baratheons. He gets there in this tiny little dragon, which I realized how small that dragon was later. And lo and behold, who's there?
Amen. Look, I'm sorry, but that sapphire looked sick. I'm like, bro, don't even wear the eye patch.
When he takes it off,
dude,
and I saw it, I was like, whoa.
That is, one, it's intimidating as hell.
Yeah.
And then the scar to go with it, too.
Yep. So at first, I thought he had carved like a dragon pupil on him, but I realized it's just a scar. It looked really badass.
Yeah.
And then I thought about it. So, when Luke goes and he's like, hey, we're just asking that you be, you could go to your oaths and swear to the queen. And then the guy was like, well, are you going to marry one of my daughters? Like, what do you bring me?
Yeah.
And then in my mind, he could have been, there are multitude of answers he could have been. He's like, I don't bring anything, but there could be peace, multiple answers.
I mean, he could have. The problem was, he's a boy. Like, he's 14 years old. He wasn't, his mother sent him over there to Storm's End because it was supposed to be the shorter journey. The Baratheons have blood ties with Rhaenys, so it was expected to be a warm reception.
Yep.
And so, I mean, I agree with you that he could have been like, well, you could have a post in the council. You could be Lord of Ships or Lord of Coin or Hand of the King
or something, and be like, well, you're right. I don't bring you anything, but I don't want to bring war.
Yeah, but at the same time though too, he couldn't be like, oh yeah, I'm gonna marry, because it was public knowledge that he's already betrothed to somebody else. And at this point, I think that his name is Boris Baratheon. But Boris at this point, I think, had already made up his mind as to who he was going to support. So he was just more kind of like heckling. He's like, he's just like, oh, the Baratheons are not some dogs that your mother can call on a whim.
But what was interesting is, so right after that, when he's trying to leave and Aemon is like, oh, well, fight me, I want to take your eye. And they draw their swords, and again, Boris is like, no bloodshed will be on my in my kingdom or whatever. Again, at that exact moment, the perfect line for Luke would have been like, if you align with the current king, there will be bloodshed on your doorstep. But if you align with your mother, we can avoid it. Yeah. Something along those lines.
I mean, again,
right?
It's the he's scared out of his mind.
Yes,
he was scared out of his mind.
I don't think Luke. Well, it doesn't matter, but I don't think Luke was I actually enjoyed Luke. I thought he was going to be I
mean, he was very brave. He did what he could do to the extent that he could do it. In that particular situation, like I said, I think Boris Baratheon had already made up his mind as to who. I don't think there was much of a situation that he could have changed. Ironically, if I would have written that line, I would have had Luke be like, so what happened to it's a fair exchange? I thought we had settled this. It was like, I may have lost an eye, but I gained a dragon. Is that not cool anymore?
I know. Obviously, immediately after that, they get into a high-speed chase in the clouds.
It was a dogfight, is what it was.
Yeah, between Luke's dragon.
So here's the interesting thing, right? It looks like to me that because Aemon could have very well lashed out and attacked Luke while he was in the courtyard, but instead he takes his knife, he throws it at him, he goes, "Give me your eye," right? I don't think he intended to kill him.
I don't think so either.
I think he wanted to scare the piss out of him and send him home. What happened is the dragons. It's going to show you that maybe the Targaryens have some control over the dragons the more they bond, but with these two being so young, not the dragons, but the riders.
The riders, yeah.
They don't have full control.
Oh yeah, 100%. You can see that in the fight when I think Luke had a little bit more because he's like, hey, I forget what he says, the quote, but he's like, hey, just trust me.
Yeah.
Calm down.
Yeah. He said it in English and in Valerian. He said, Yoharis.
Yeah, and he's,
so he's like, obey, yeah.
So he's like, all right, I got you. I don't think Aemon has that type of training with a dragon that they have. I don't think he cares. Aemon is very much more military based, fighting based, kick ass first, ask questions later.
It's also the thing that Viserys was telling Rhaenyra in the earlier episode when he was talking to Rhaenyra and he was telling the concepts that we control the dragons are an illusion. I think that he spelled it out. I think that particularly Viserys, with him having been the last rider of Balerion the Black Dread, he flew Balerion, so he understood what the kind of power that Aemon has with Vhagar.
Yeah, and
so I thought it was very telling how I think Luke just stayed low and just tried to flee back to Dragonstone. I think he could have stood a chance, but I think his dragon got scared and in just like a pure reflexive defensive maneuver attacked Vhagar.
I disagree on that part. I think Luke actually did attack him.
Yeah.
Because he did a flyby and so I disagree. I think because once they were up there, they were having a full dogfight. Like he was doing some maneuver stuff. Luke, I think Luke had great control over the dragon. Aemon, not so much because he's like, I have the big dragon. I don't got to do training.
Yeah.
Once they went above the clouds,
and
then
Vermax is also so much smaller and so much faster.
Yeah,
so it was definitely.
So you need more control personally. You also see the size difference. I was like,
that
oh my
shot
God.
is iconic.
Yeah, I saw
with Vhagar just coming above. Oh my!
I knew he was the biggest dragon, but it didn't hit me until I saw that. I was like, I thought they were all the same, but still.
No.
So once that happens, they go in the clouds and they come back down. I think at a certain point, because of what was going on, I think Luke wanted to not attack him directly, but kind of be like,
maybe distract
him, or like a warning shot or something like that, and then be like, I'm gonna do this, and then I'm gonna flee, and that's why he went above the clouds to flee. And at that point, I think Vhagar was like, oh hell no,
we're done.
And I think at that point, that's when Aemon lost control of the dragon.
So I mean, he was clearly at that point he realized what Vhagar was going in for the kill, and
he's like no, and just reminded me of Jaws.
It was so devastating.
Yeah,
like one bite, like that dragon was in 3 pieces.
Yeah,
and Luke was somewhere in the middle.
I was thinking about that. I was like, could Luke have made it? But then when I thought about it, it was the dragon was in 3 pieces. Luke is either inside Vhagar,
or falling to his death. And I'm like, oof. And falling to death, I would have been cool with, because at least maybe he can swoop in.
Yeah. God, that.
Yeah, because he went right for the middle of Vermax, so there's a good chance that Luke got digested.
Yeah. And the look on Aemon's face, and he's like, "Oh, I just messed up."
Yeah.
Oh man.
Yeah. And the thing about it is that he's gonna have to own it up in a way. Like, I don't see him going back to King's Landing and being like, "I lost control of Vhagar. I fucked up. I messed up."
Yeah.
I think he at this point he's not going to admit that he lost control, so he's just going to be like, well, I mean, he needed to die, so I killed him. Like, he's...
Yeah, that's going to be a very interesting thing, how they portray that. The news, when Daemon broke the news to Rhaenyra, and you can see the slow walk that Daemon had, and him telling her that Luke is dead, and her face turning.
I thought it was expertly shot because there was no dialogue in that entire sequence.
Yep.
But it was so impactful because you see him walking up to her and so gently grabbing her hand and looking at her. And then her looking at him, and then you see her knees buckle. And like you said, just the expression on her face, like
she goes from, you know, distraught sorrow to just pure anger and blackout.
Yep.
And I'm like, ooh.
And thus begins the Dance of the Dragons.
Great episode.
So
great episode.
Great finale. Great finale. Great episode. The tension was there. The like I said, I think that's gonna become an iconic shot. The shot of Vagar flying above Vermax. Like
that was really good.
It was a very well shot sequence. And I think it added a lot more character. You know, in the books Aemond was a little bit more one dimensional. He was and that's kind of one of the things. The way that Fire and Blood is written through the perspective of like maesters and third hand account. So you don't get any perspective from the people that were actually involved.
Yeah.
So for them to add this little bit of regret and sorrow from Aemond's perspective, and you know, kind of introduce it as, you know, he didn't intend to actually kill him, but you know, still ended up doing so anyway. I think that adds another layer to his character, because I think especially with the children, it's one of those, they are pushed to this limit, but it didn't necessarily need to be. Like, you know, Aemon's hatred for Luke all stemmed from when they were kids and they were picking each other and they picked on him for not having a dragon. And so and all of that could have just been a healthy rivalry between family members, but because of the underhandedness between both Rhaenyra and Alicent, both of them planting seeds. I feel more Alicent than Rhaenyra, but again, both of them planting seeds of separation within the family. That now this line has been crossed and it cannot be uncrossed.
Yeah,
like if there was any hope for peace, this ended.
Yeah, I agree, and it's definitely the children. Like if you look at it, I think Jace and Luke definitely hold a lot more restraint from what they say and do, versus Aemon and Aegon don't really care. They're like, we're just gonna do what we want. And it definitely stems from Alicent being like more petty.
Well, she was constantly questioning their birthright.
Yeah,
she was constantly, you know.
And also Rhaenyra being restrained. So
one more thing before we go over onto the series review as a whole. Corlys Velaryon, him coming back from being sick, and then like props to the actor, because he embodies what I think that character should be. And then even when they're having that conversation, when you know Rhaenys was talking to him, and he's just like, you know what, we can stay out of it. We'll just go back to Driftmark. We don't have to pick a side. We'll just do. And then Rhaenys at this point, I guess she's realized it's like, look, even if we don't pick a side, eventually war's gonna come to us. So we either pick a side now or we pick a side later, but we're gonna have to get involved at some point.
Yeah. And it's also where she's also like, we can just go home. And I think he at this point also realizes, because he's like, I don't really have much left. I kind of want to go back home and do nothing, but it also made, you know, he has more of an ambitious mind.
I think
she does.
Him telling her that they could just go back home was him basically telling her that she was right. That all of his pursuits for power were more to satisfy his own ambition than it was to, because, you know, in the first couple episodes, she pressed him on why she was doing this, and he was like, I want to get justice for you. You know, you should have been queen. This, you know, this is something that you should have had. And when you know, Rhaenys and everybody else could clearly see, no, it was more Corlys having ambition of his own, wanting to see his house rise in power and influence, and the fact that now it's kind of a little bit reversed, and not so much that Rhaenys wants power, but it's kind of like, look, we made our bed, now we have to lay in it.
Yeah. Yeah, and his entrance, everyone felt silent, and then he's like, okay, what's the plan? Rhaenyra goes over her plan, and you could tell he's like definitely grilling her, and he's like, well, what about this? What about this? And she's like, yeah, but we're not going to do that. And I think he wanted to truly see what side.
Yeah, he was gauging her.
He was gauging her, and once she gave him a more than satisfied answer, and he's like, you have our fleets, which I think was phenomenal. I definitely feel Rhaenys and Rhaenyra's connection a lot more because of the last few events that happened. Because before they're like, hard pass.
Small side note, when Rhaenys and Corlys were talking about, basically Rhaenys was catching him up on what happened while he was gone, and then he mentions that Vaemon got his head chopped off, and his reaction was just kind of basically, it's like, oh, well, yeah, he did kind of have a mouth on him. Like, he wasn't even mad. He's just
like, oh, no. He literally did okay.
He's just kind of like, yeah, that tracks. He would do that.
So, because they don't really have much left. Their daughter is dead. Their son is dead. His brother is dead. So all they have is their grandchildren.
Yeah.
So, yeah, I feel where they're coming from, but that was a great turn of events.
So overall, the series now as a whole, I made the claim, I think 2 episodes ago, that I was ready to call it, that I was ready to say season 1 House of the Dragon for me was better than season 1 Game of Thrones, and reflecting on that a little bit, I'm going to say that I think I'm going to go ahead and revise that a little bit and say it is just as good as season 1. I feel like looking at everything in parallel, Game of Thrones had a lot more to do with less. I feel like Game of Thrones had to introduce us to the world, introduce us to characters, introduce us to the story type, hook us in, whereas with House of the Dragon, we already had a lot of that groundwork laid out, and they were able to focus more on character. I love that both season 1 of Game of Thrones was able to give us a character as complicated as Ned Stark, and then in the same turn around with House of the Dragon on season 1 and turn what in the book Viserys is nowhere near as complex, and nowhere near as likable, and basically turned Viserys into this tragic figure.
Yeah, the actor who portrayed him did a phenomenal job. Props to him over one season. The different ways he did the acting.
And so like, as characters go, they are as different as they could be, Ned Stark and Viserys Targaryen. But the fact that both actors were able to use the tragedy of their characters throughout the arc of the first season, because I very much feel that Ned Stark was the glue for the first season of Game of Thrones. I think it was Viserys for this season, and had his character not been as compelling as they turned him into, I don't think the season would have been successful. So I was ready to call it a couple episodes ago, but actually thinking about it, really, I think Game of Thrones had a little bit more work to do and did it particularly well. And also the story for Game of Thrones is a little bit more intriguing because there's a lot more moving parts. Yeah. Whereas this is a lot more intimate. You're looking at the inner workings of a single family house.
Yeah, not everything. So the one thing that I like, I think they drew great parallels between season 1 of Game of Thrones and season 1 House of the Dragon. Yeah. And I don't think they rehashed any of the stuff, but they were fantastic parallels. Right? So off the bat, the scene where the first time when the only time Aemon's takes over Vhagar. That scene in the courtroom reminded me, what I talked about earlier, that scene reminds me of episode 1 of Game of Thrones, or was it 1 or 2, when they had to kill one of the dire wolves, right? Yeah. They're having that issue. They're like, okay, someone needs to pay. Yeah. Right, that parallel. The king, both Robert Baratheon and Viserys, both die in episode 8 of the first season. They both die in season 8. In episode 8, yeah. Yep. Okay. The crazy parallels. I'm trying to think of the others. The whole Ned Stark thing. To me, though I do agree with you on Viserys, I don't think he was the glue that held it together. I definitely think it was more of not Daemon, but more or less Daemon's interaction with everybody else. Right? So certain actions that Daemon took progress the story in their life. Yeah, absolutely. Like, things like this. I don't think it was Viserys directly. And as well as Rhaenyra. Yeah. Like, I love her. I think she's a phenomenal character. I think her dynamic is very different than what we saw as Daenerys. Right. The other one was to me, I think season 1 of Game of Thrones is better because it was something new. And the ending I was not hooked on Game of Thrones at all until the last episode of season 1. That's when I'm like, I like this show. I think House of the Dragon has a lot more complexity. So overall, there's a lot going on that I liked. Right. So that yeah. So especially with let's see. What was the last thing that happened in that episode? Ned Stark's getting head chopped off. Yeah. And the dragons being revealed. Yeah. In Game of Thrones.
That was the last shot.
Literally the
last shot of the season.
And at that point, I think everyone's like, oh my god, this is an actual high fantasy show. Yeah. Right? Before that, it was just some medieval
political intrigue, yeah.
Yeah, but once that happened, you're like, everything clicks, everything makes sense. I think in this season, or this show, that moment actually happened, I would say when Aemon
stole the egg.
Stole the egg, but when Aemon kills, Aemon kills Luke.
No, Vhagar. You mean? Yeah.
Well, yeah. I think that is what made the show, and I'm like, now the show is picked up. Well, I mean, it already picked up, but that's what I was like. All right, there we go.
Well, yeah. I mean, it was literally the point of no return. For the family, for the story. I want to talk a little bit about the choice that they took with the casting and them having younger actors for the earlier part of the season and then transitioning. And I don't think it worked with every actor, but the two primary ones, Alicent and Rhaenyra, I am immensely impressed with how seamless that transition, and I mean, I feel like others might disagree, but I legitimately, like, I look back at the earlier season and I look at Millie Alcock and then I look at Emma Darcy as Rhaenyra, and I can
you can see that
I can see the progression of the character, and at no point after Emma Darcy was introduced as the older version of Rhaenyra did I look at her and go, that's not Rhaenyra.
Yeah, I felt that with Alicent. Yeah. I think both the actresses of Alicent were played. They were literally. I think they like might have rehearsed their stuff together.
Well, they so part of like the behind the scenes stuff. They showed that both of the older actresses were there on set. While they were filming the scenes with the younger actresses
to get their mannerisms.
Yeah, and they all interacted with each other so that to help with that performance.
Yeah, because definitely, I think Alicent specifically, I definitely felt that it felt like the same character, like the same actress, right? Like, I know physically she looks different, but she felt exactly like the same the younger actress. I thought that was amazing. as far as Rhaenyra goes, I think the looks of it phenomenal. She definitely got certain facial expressions. Than the younger one, there is a few differences, but I think Allison, the actor that they played out, both actors that played Allison, phenomenal job. They were it was the same person, person.
Yeah, no, and like I said, they took a big risk with that because it could have very easily been, because I know initially a lot of people really liked Millie Alcock as Rhaenyra from
and so I thought she was a really good job.
And so they ran the risk. The name of the actress that played Allison escapes me, but both of them got really good positive reviews for their portrayals. Supposedly for season 2 they are planning to shoot some flashback scenes that are going to involve the younger actresses. So they are currently
coming back,
listed as coming back for season 2.
Gotcha.
So that'll be cool, I guess. But overall, like I said, I give props for the way that transition was handled. And now they did it with a couple of more of the characters, the Valerian kids, the Strong Boys.
Strong Boys.
And I don't feel like they worked that well. Give props to the young version of Aemon, the one that we saw claiming Vhagar, because I thought he
did a
particularly
really good
stood
job.
out and did a pretty fantastic job. And yeah, I mean the characters that were introduced were all great. The ones that, as much as I hate Christian Cole,
Crispy Cole.
The fact that in the beginning of the show I liked him, I was rooting for him.
Yeah, I thought he was a great character. Yeah,
I was like, oh man, this guy is such a noble, good character. And then the way they just,
you know what got me? I was thinking about it. I was like, 20 years, he still has an issue. Let it go, man.
It's
you got your heart broken.
It's super
Let
petty.
it go.
And was it just me, or did you pick up he's kind of simping for Alicent too?
I was literally the next words out of my mouth. There seems to be clearly something between them.
Yeah.
It might not be something that involves the bedroom, but I might not. But I definitely think there's something between them because the way. So the scene, what was it, episode 9, when he accidentally kills.
Accidentally.
He basically sat him down very hard, right? He's like, sit down. It wasn't like, here's your head, boom, smash. Nobody batted an eye. They're like, all right, cool, he's dead. And then they're like, you're removed. And Alicent's like, no.
Yeah.
He's gonna stay. I know what he did. He's gonna stay.
Actually, he can have your job.
Yeah. And there's other time where he defends her, and I'm like, there's definitely something going on. Now, maybe it's one of those, misery loves company type things, and they're both like, we both hate Rhaenyra, so let's just, be friends, but there's something there. If it wasn't for episode 9, weird foot thing, I would say there might be something between Larys, but never mind.
Oh God! You know what? I don't want to talk about the foot thing.
I don't want to talk about Larys.
Not talk about.
Yeah.
We don't talk about Larys.
How has he not aged at all? Not a day.
Well, those strong genes.
Not a day. No, I'm talking about Crispy Cole.
Oh. Yeah.
Crispy Cole hasn't aged at all.
I thought you said Larys hadn't aged.
Larys grew up a little bit. But no, Crispy Cole hasn't aged.
He got a haircut.
They even at least Otto, they gave him some white hair and some eyes, eyeline. They even gave Damien, which I was surprised, gave him a few here and there. He still looks young as hell. Nothing to Crispy Cole. So,
my most hated character other than Crispy Cole is Otto Hightower.
I don't like Alicent. As a character, I don't like Alicent.
I don't know, man. I can sort of empathize with her to a certain degree. She's been manipulated. She's been I don't know. For me. I think she can be as manipulative and as cutthroat as her father, but she, I guess, does a better job of hiding the malice
because she hides it behind a veil of righteousness, even though behind the veil she's doing some shady stuff.
Yeah, I suppose.
But because of that veil,
I don't feel like, I don't know. I feel like had certain things gone differently, like I don't think she would have pushed through it. Like even with the dinner that they had, like and her and Rhaenyra kind of like talking to each other, and her telling Rhaenyra to stay right before Viserys died. I think that there was a chance, there is a timeline in which they would have been able to resolve things. And I think that just Otto took advantage of seeding as much paranoia into her as possible.
Yeah. I think Otto has good intentions overall, but he's stuck in olden ways, and he's like, what the way I see is the way I think is the best, which is whatever. I think Allison does not actually think on her own. She's like, I have these guidelines that I go by, and I want everyone to conform to these.
Yeah.
But I don't have to. Yeah. She says she does, but right. And I think that's what makes her worse than Otto. Otto's like, I know the parameters. He's like, I know I'm doing wrong, but I do it for the good. And he's like,
I don't know.
I think he's more self-aware of his actions.
The way that I see Otto is more like the very interesting conversation between Corlys and Daemon, right? And one of the main reasons why Otto and Daemon don't get along is because Daemon sees through him right other way. Like when he was telling Viserys, I see Otto for what he is. And Viserys goes, a loyal servant. He goes, a second son, a cunt. Like, and it's true. All of his ambition, it would be one thing to want to have your opinion and want what's best for the world. Right? Or for what you think is best for your kingdom.
Yeah.
But if you believe in the monarchy, if you believe in that system of government, then you have to recognize that the king has the ultimate authority.
Yeah.
And even in that instance, in the exact instinct where the king was putting his decree as to what he wanted, he goes, no, I know better. Do you think that he would have been as determined to put Aegon on the throne if that was Daemon and Rhaenyra's child, instead of or even let's say the queen had never died, and it was because he's the whole reason why Rhaenyra got named as heir, because he hated Daemon, and he's like, Daemon is heir at the moment. And he's like, Daemon's too dangerous to be allowed to become king. You got to name Rhaenyra.
Yeah.
So then he does that, and then now it's like, oh well, my grandson is the first. So it's all personal gain.
And what's funny is I think at the end of his life, Viserys also realized that Otto is not the best of hands. I think
Lionel
was the best hand.
He was
the best hand, but I think Viserys also realized at a certain point that he should have named Daemon the hand.
Yeah,
I think Daemon would have been a phenomenal.
Yes,
because he's when Otto is very manipulative, and he's also very political. He's like, well, we have to do it tenderly. That's why he's very manipulative. He goes around everything to get what he wants. Right. Yeah. Daemon straight through. He's like, this is what I want. This is what's going to happen. And I think he would have been a great hand.
Yeah.
So and I think at a certain point, I think Viserys even realized that. He's like, especially in, what was it?
Laena's funeral.
Yes. Yeah. He's like, well, dang.
Yeah, come back to court. Yeah. And it was, but closing up and winding down on this, fabulous first season. I thoroughly enjoyed it, and I am super stoked for some more House of the Dragon, although unfortunately we won't get another episode till 2024.
24.
Filming is supposed to start in the spring. So, I mean, it's not actually going to be 2 years. It's going to be more like a year and, you know, whatever.
And it's still 2024.
Yeah, 2024. But I'm stoked with what they did. I can't wait to see more. Yeah.
So, thank you guys for watching. This was our review of Season 1 of House of the Dragon. Please catch us next time for our next review.
Oh, yeah. And one more thing before we go. We appreciate everyone for all of your support. Keep hitting the like button. Keep commenting your thoughts on the videos. Please hit subscribe if you haven't subscribed already. Tell your friends. Tell your family. Come check us out. We've got lots more coming down the pipeline. We appreciate you guys. Thanks.